We're now going to conclude the session with Jan Ferguson. Jan's the Managing Director of NintiOne, so I'll stand aside and let you go.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks to everybody. I won't take terribly long, but I did think it was useful to have some photos behind me because some of you, though not all of you, will not have the whole experience of camels in remote and very remote Australia. So I think visually it pays to put those pictures out there of what is actually going on. And it's interesting that a number of you have used the visual images to portray exactly what's going on. For those of you who don't know me, I come from Beltana in the Northern Flinders Ranges, and we have the dubious honour of being the place that camels were brought to first. So they were brought there for the whole, advancing development in Northern Australia, and they were used very effectively, quite big Afghan populations, and still people, descendants of those peoples living there. And they have a whole romantic side to them and memory. Then there's the other side of when they have it back to Beltana and they turn up and they eat everything, poop everywhere, and everybody gets a bit, uppity about that. But they also have quite a romantic notion. Once again, those of you who've been to the movies recently, Robin Davidson's film Tracks, which is about actually walking camels from Alice Springs to the coast in Western Australia, was actually filmed at Beltana as well. And it was absolutely beautiful, I have to say, to be at the Adelaide Festival Theatre. And there were two beautiful camels there with her standing there just, communicating with them. She wasn't actually that interested in people. She was very much more interested in the camels than she was in the people. So they have a whole series of emotional attachments in Australia, and you don't go anywhere that you don't see them. I was going through an airport recently, and Quentin and Andy, who've worked very hard on this project from a NintiOne perspective, there was an advent calendar with camels in it, and I thought, I think I'm ridiculous by this, but I thought that coming to the end of this project, at least they might have some amusement about how emotionally we are attached to these animals. And they are a blessing and a curse. They're good icons for the tourist industry. They're fun to ride on, all those things. But the other side of it, it's like any poor animal that becomes a feral, which it didn't ask to be, then you've got issues with dealing with it. So where have we come from? We've come from a basis where we had little knowledge, we didn't have the infrastructure, and we didn't have the relationships. So where are we now? We've actually got a lot more knowledge. You've had an enormous amount of information put in front of you today, and that will continue to go on and be used into the future. We've got infrastructure for herding and yarding animals, which will assist the commercial use industry. We've got infrastructure in a soft sense where people have the understanding of how to use the very significant calibre rifles that you actually need to use to reduce camels humanely. You heard the RSPCA today talk about soft infrastructure that they've got in terms of humaneness of removing large feral herbivores. And what I'd like us to think about is the relationships we've developed through this project. And Lindy talked a minute ago about the personal relationships she's developed. I'd like to think that what we've left you with is relationships that will encourage you to work together in the future, not only on this particular issue, but other complex issues that you might be facing in remote and very remote Australia. We've developed an evidence base. The report is fully available on the website. We've been particularly open through this project. Everything we've ever produced is there, warts and all. We've learned a lot. You've learned a lot. The case studies, I think, are useful to the particular communities who have participated in them to have something to take back. Ninti prides itself on actually producing material that can go back into the communities, whatever sort of community they are. And we would hope that those case studies can be used not only by the people who've contributed to them, but schools and the like, where they actually want to understand this situation further. In terms of where we go to from here, this issue will not remain in balance or under the level of control it is at the moment without an integrated approach of commercial harvest, ground control, and at times aerial culling. We'd like to add to that the ongoing knowledge development, because we think that the ongoing knowledge development is going to be really important. It's going to be really interesting to see whether the infrastructure and the relationships that we believe that we've developed as part of this project are able to sustain, and you're able to integrate those three approaches. We firmly believe that any one of them in isolation will not completely fix the issue. It's worth remembering it's in Australia we haven't managed to eradicate one feral pest. We've managed to manage some for good or bad. We actually believe this is one we could manage if we stayed on the case with it. We estimate that the investment that's required to keep this feral under some sort of control is in the vicinity of about $4 million a year. That's about what the project was able to responsibly spend, and when you analyse what's needed, that's about the level of investment. Then that investment is not, I'm not talking about investment from the Australian government, I'm talking about investment from all of the stakeholders who are involved in this issue. So that's our estimation of the sort of level that's needed to actually keep this to some degree in check. So what have we achieved in terms of the contract that we had on a lot of your behalf with the Australian government? We met the density targets, which is what we were contracted to do. We increased the productivity of pastoral stations where we were working consistently, and I think Lindy gave us some indication of that before. And we've contributed significantly to the knowledge base around the whole project. There are people out and about who want to discredit some elements of the project. I would encourage you to speak up on the basis of the information you've heard today about what sort of an integrated approach this is. It's not about this and that, it's about an integrated systemic approach to dealing with what is a large feral herbivore that is a problem. Yes, it might be nice when it's managed and stands on the red carpet of the festival centre, but it's not so nice when it greets you in an unfriendly manner somewhere where you didn't particularly feel inclined to meet it. I'd like to thank you all for your openness, honesty, integrity with which you've operated in this project. Roger, who I can't see at the minute, but Roger Smith, who's chaired the steering committee, talked about this morning. We haven't always had easy issues to resolve. Ninti doesn't shrink from taking on complex issues. I am personally exceedingly passionate about remote and very remote Australia, and I'll stand up and argue the toss with anybody about the importance of the issues that face remote and very remote Australia. I've spent a third of my working life in remote Australia, and I intend to spend a lot more, when I eventually decide to retire, a lot more of my retirement in remote Australia. I spend of my working life at the moment at least 2/3 in remote Australia, and the other times I'm in places like this trying to press the message on behalf of the various people that we work with in Ninti on behalf of remote and very remote Australia. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for your constructive dialogue, your commitment and your willingness to give it a go when we were not sure where all parts of this project would pan out. I really want to leave you with encouraging you to stick with the relationships. You know, you can stand out there and disagree with each other, that's fine, but it's not going to take you anywhere. And while you're disagreeing with each other, you're not actually going to get investment from anybody to fix anything. So it's really important that the dialogue continues. Ninti will undertake to bring the steering committee together in a teleconference sense, probably 3 times a year, so that we can share information. We're not being funded to do this. This is something that we'll undertake to do on our own behalf to give you an opportunity to actually exchange any information that you want. We can't afford to do it, all the time, but we will actually do it probably 2 or 3 times a year so that we can keep the conversation going and give you a forum in which to continue to share your information. So thank you very much. What I'd like you to do is show your appreciation to everybody who's been involved in the project in the normal way, please.